images today are from the Smithsonian Arts website. So you can go there as well on your own sometime, or you can follow along and learn more about it. There's lots of information. I won't have time to go over everything. And we do like to just soak in the artwork a little bit too. You know, it's just nice to look at different artwork. Here is the outside of the building and the inside. It's quite a beautiful building inside and out, really. It's the first collection of American art that really has an unparalleled American art experience. And so it's home to one of the largest and most inclusive collections of American art in the world. And it really, in 1980, they really focused more on that. It has a long history. I'm not going to get into all of it because it's a really complicated how it all became the American Art Museum, because there's also the National Gallery of Art, which kind of relates to it, but this is more focused on American art. And this building that you see here was saved. It was going to be demolished, but they decided to save it and keep it for the art museum. Basically, it's an old, I believe, a postal office. I want to say it was a postal office. They almost, the patent office, excuse me. It was the patent office building. So they changed it into this museum. You can see this, I love this hallway here, or the corridor. And that'd be a different way. I've never been to a museum that has these here like this, you know, you're overlooking the rotunda or whatever, not rotunda, but you know what I mean. It's just a different setup. And then here's some other interior images. So I think just seeing the architecture itself would be quite an experience, really. Quite beautiful. Okay. So can anybody guess which state was the first state to be admitted to the United States? Or what was the first one that we started with? Anybody remember those, whatever grade we learned all this in? All right, I'll just move on. It is Delaware. That was our first state. And and I do need to have a disclaimer. I did my best to, and the reason, I guess I didn't explain, these artists were born or had a big influence on their work here or died in these states. That's how I arranged which state with which artist. That might have been helpful as to how I even put these artists with this state. That's how I came about it. But the disclaimer is, when I looked on Wikipedia for other information, it didn't always match up to what the Smithsonian had. So I did my best to decipher, you know, that it was the most accurate information I could find. So just, there you go. So this is Edward Redfield. A lot of these artists I am not familiar with, because American art, especially back then, wasn't as popular as European art, really. So there might be some artists today that are new to us. Edward was a landscape painter who lived in Pennsylvania, and he was the leader of a group of artists that included some other artists, Daniel Garber, if you're familiar with them, Walter Schofield, and Robert Spencer. But winter scenes were his forte. So you'll see a lot of his paintings feature a winter scene. Next is Pennsylvania. That's our second state, or the other word for state. What is that? What are they called? What were they called when they were first? Not a state, but I'm lost. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Okay, I'm more about the art today, I guess. Okay, this artist, Thomas Eakins. Now I've heard of him. Might be more familiar with Thomas Eakins. He was born in Philadelphia, lived mostly in that area. And he was a painter, he was a photographer and sculptor. He did all sorts of artworks. And he really had more, he was more controversial with his paintings, or his artwork a little bit. He was unusual because he would paint his subjects more with a psychology component to it. See, like this picture here, you can even see there's more of a thought to this sitter rather than just a nice portrait pose. He really depicted thoughts and psychology in his portraits. So that was a little unusual at the time. So, and a lot of times in 1903, especially, artists would turn to nature. He wasn't as much into that. He was really into these portraits as well. And there you are. Okay, third state. Any guesses? It's in the Northeast. So, all right.
New York.
Oh, close, New Jersey. There you go. Yep. George Innes, we might know, some of us might know about his work. Beautiful work. If you're into the landscapes, he is considered often called the father of American landscape painting. His career spanned more than 40 years, and he has over 1,000 paintings, it says, too. So he was an active painter. All right, now we go quite a bit south, actually, which if anybody's following along with the order of states, let me know if I got this wrong, because I double checked, but I was like, really, this is next. So Georgia's next. That was the next state. And Alma Thomas, is anybody familiar with her work? Yeah, I see some heads nodding. Yeah, she's really into these colors, and she does more of this, not patchwork, but just these dot kind of work to it with these beautiful bright colors. That's more her style. And she didn't have her artwork really come about fully till she was a lot older. She wasn't necessarily a lifelong artist, but lots of really beautiful work. She was in her 8th decade of life when she produced her most important works. So she was in her 80s.
Wasn't this an article recently? Does it look familiar?
Yes. Yes, that's right. Article is a very good, Nancy. Article is a website that I haven't done it today. It's like a Wordle, if you're familiar with Wordle, and you can go to, it's the National Gallery of Art. Every day they have a different artist you can guess. So go to nga.gov. Got to think it through. If we have time, but we can jump there. So, all right. All right. Next is Connecticut. We're jumping back up north. That's the next state we have here. Ralph Earl. That was a new artist for me. I hadn't heard much about him. He grew up in a family of farmers and craftsmen, and he refused to fight during the Revolutionary War. And his father suspected he was a British spy. So he disinherited him. And so he left. Ralph Earl left his wife and his kids and went to England. He fled to England. And then he came back with a new wife. And he started to, he established himself as a portraitist in New York. So didn't have a very good ending to his life, alcoholism, debt. But people liked his work so much, they helped him get out of debt and helped him settle in Connecticut. And he started doing portraits there.